Where's that photo?
Okay, so a little bit about our possible credibility. We've flown over 100 Harris hawks between us and caught game with them. And we've bred over 1,000 Harris hawks that are selectively bred, hopefully for enhanced falconry performance. That's our goal. And we've also written a book that, oops, shoot, I'm not going to get this handle of this. All right, the hang of this. That's over 661 pages, a lot of numbers, right? And that's our combined knowledge of the Harris hawk. And we're very serious falconers, and it's very important for us that our hawks catch game and are successful, you know, just about every time they go out. So this was the last NAFA meet, our best day there, and we had 10 hawks that we drove from Louisiana in our car, and we had 5 hunts, 2 hawks for each hunt, and they did pretty well. Oh yeah, let me just say this. And so we like to live by Teddy Moritz's motto. She's a character. Anyway. All right, and we're also both scientists, so we really bring a data-driven approach to falconry. We keep records on everything, kind of nuts about that. So, you know, everything that the hawks catch and their weights, at the meets we weigh them twice a day, all that kind of stuff. Tom worked with alligators for most of his life doing research on them, and I have a long-term study on swallowtail kites. We also have the Baywing database that we're using to collect data on Harris hawks that are used in captivity. So let's look at cooperation in wild Harris hawks first, an overview. Many of you know that Harris hawks are cooperative breeders. Well, cooperative breeders, yeah, but guess what? A lot of them don't breed cooperatively. Plenty of them, about half in the studies that we've seen, are monogamous, which means a male and a female, and no helpers. But really their breeding runs the gamut with all kinds of polygamy, including polyandry, which is 2 males mating with 1 female, polygyny, which is much rarer and has been documented only a few times. And next slide. The other aspect of their breeding is that they often have helpers. So helpers are other birds that catch prey and help with defending the territory and bring food to the nest. They may not be allowed to feed the young. And in this case, here's a female from a previous nesting effort that's assisting her mother. So what are the group sizes like? Early on, the reports, if you looked at averaging out different studies, group sizes seem to be larger in Arizona, medium sized in New Mexico, and the smallest group sizes were in Texas. And in fact, very few groups were documented in Texas. And, you know, we were like, baloney, I don't think so, right? So this is the average group sizes, and this is the percentage from studies, reported from studies, of breeding units that were living in groups. And so Texas, only 9% groups. So one of the things that we published was our observations in 1995 of, well, the observations were earlier, of Harris hawks hunting in groups, 6 Harris hawks hunting in a group in West Texas, 4 Harris hawks hunting in a group in South Texas, etc. And that generated some interest. Was this a real difference, or was it just that some of the people in the Texas studies didn't observe the nest long enough to really know how many birds were at the nest? And Jim Dawson really posed that question. And it got Bill Clark, who's done the field, he had a field guide that just came out recently, got him interested in this, and he decided to study Harris hawks in South Texas in the Tamaulipas brushlands. And he found that, you know, he always saw 3 to 7 Harris hawks living in together in a lot of the groups year-round. So he knew that they had to be cooperating here. Then he looked at his trapping records, and he's trapped a lot of Harris hawks. So in 494 trapping events, a lot of the time, 34% of the time, he was catching more than 1 hawk on a trap and seeing others in the group there. And so this was one indication that groups were more prevalent than previously reported. And then he did some nest studies where he, really focused on nest and looked at how many birds were coming to the nest. And he found that over 2 years that more than half of the nesting efforts were 3 or more birds. And he has some, decent sample sizes here. So I think that vindicates the Harris-Hawk in Texas. Anyway, Harris-Hawks have a dominance hierarchy or a pecking order. Dawson and Mannon did the study on this, but it's something that we really see pretty commonly in captive Harris-Hawks as well, that females usually dominate males. And then within an age group, that's within an age group, and adults always dominate immatures. And so the dominance hierarchy usually consists of the alpha female that's a breeder, the alpha male that's a breeder. Occasionally there's a second female breeder. Occasionally a beta male will breed, but then is it really a beta male? Anyway, and then there are a bunch of non-breeders that may help with the nesting effort, but not breed. Harris-Hawks are also cooperative hunters when they live in groups. And Bednar's had a paper that came out in Science about this. I guess the main point is that why would they cooperate? Well, one thing is that the hunters share the meat. And that's something we've seen in the wild. We've even seen altruism where the group went down and ate on the kill and took turns and this, that, and the other. And then they took part of the cottontail and brought it to a bird in the brush that was injured, that was sitting a foot off the ground, So pretty amazing how they take care of their group members. So his study, he looked at the number of let me move on to the next slide, sorry. In his study, he looked at the hunting party size, 2 hawks, 4 hawks, 6 hawks, and the number of catches they made per hour on this axis. I know who would show a graph like this. But anyway, the point is that if it was only 2 or 4 hawks, they generally didn't catch enough meat to feed everybody, at least in his observations in New Mexico in winter. But a hunting party size of 5 to 6 birds caught enough game and big enough game to get everybody fed. So he posed the large prey hypothesis because cottontails are one of the mainstays of the diet of Harris-Hawks in North America. And that might be the benefit to hunting in a group, that it would allow you to tackle things like jackrabbits and cottontails. And I'm sure there's some truth to that. Then we posed the challenging habitats hypothesis as a benefit for group hunting because of some of the things we saw in wild Harris-Hawks, where they were hunting in incredibly thick habitats in Odessa, where it was not only really thick mesquite, but it was also a whole lot of pack rat middens that were huge. And our Harris-Hawks had a really hard time catching prey in that habitat. And anyway, we kept thinking, well, maybe we'll just bring one more Harris-Hawk into the group, let another one go and they'll finally catch something. And I think we finally did. But anyway, the point is Harris-Hawks live in some really challenging habitats. Oh, wait, let me explain that too. So that's an antelope jackrabbit right there, and that's my male Hannibal, and that's, you know what that is. All right. Yeah, and that's, anyway, thorny, challenging. And this is Tucson. This is a hunting spot we actually did pretty well in, and there are actually falconers there, but the creosote bush was pretty high in there. So anyway, what we found was that it took, three hawks. We did a lot better than if you were hunting with only 2, 3 or 4. So Corey, our friend Corey, says Harris-Hawks are the gamiest bird in falconry, and of course, I agree with that. But anyway, Tyler, thanks for the photo, and Corey's a good duck hawker. The main diet in the wild the biggest thing that Harris-Hawks have been documented in the wild catching would be something like black-tailed jackrabbits. Great blue herons, they really don't weigh anything near what a black-tailed jackrabbit weighs, but they're big, right? That's been documented, but really rarely. But what we found, I'm sure that there aren't that many diet studies though either, so we may find other things, but we found that our Harris hawks really have a serious gang mentality, and you should be afraid of them. They've often rode on wild boars. We have wild boars that were released in Louisiana that have a lot of Russian boar in them, and a lot of the babies are the wild type. And yeah, they grab piglets, but they also grab big boars sometimes right in front of us and ride them, and you know, we don't want it to happen, but things like this do. White-tailed deer, mule deer, taking great horned owls off of the nest, killing them and eating them, and we can't find them. It's attacking bald eagles, whatever. You're like, what? We were hunting with Matt Mullinex the other day, just right before we left with his hawk, Ernie. And Ernie saw this osprey flying along the canal, and he was like, oh, man, I got the upper hand on this thing. And he just flew out of the field and started to try to take it down. And luckily, Matt was able to call him away off the chase. But anyway, so individuals have a lot of aggressiveness. Francine Forrester's female flies out of the field if they're hunting near the river and she sees a white pelican going down the river, she's like, I'm after it. And she grabs them sometimes. You know, the American white pelicans are huge. Anyway, and Bo Hummel's young bird took a roe deer at the Opakno meet. We've had other friends whose Harris hawks have taken roe deer. I would love to hunt roe deer. That would be so fun with the hawks. But anyway, so individual Harris hawks have this mentality as well. And our theory is, why are they so aggressive? Well, it's a good chance that because they've evolved to hunt in a group and they have this sort of gang mentality, that it's relaxed the carefulness of individuals, and it has made them more aggressive, that they've evolved to be this way. That's just our speculation, though. Some common misconceptions about Harris hawks is that if it's a tame hawk, tame around humans, that it's not going to be gamey. Well, we've proved that wrong on many occasions. Another common misconception would kind of be the corollary of that. Like sometimes, you know, we're breeders, people will go, I want that really aggressive bird that really wants to attack me. And I'm like, why? You know, why would she want that? Because it's going to be really aggressive on game. And it's like, well, it may be, but what we found a lot of times is a bird that's really aggressive towards humans. First of all, who wants it? But it's really a lot of times got mental things going on. So when you take it out in the field, it may not always be focused on the hunt. Whereas a tame bird that wants to hunt, that's all it wants to do. So one thing we can learn from wild Harris hawks that might help people in falconry is they are actually territorial. And this was a debate in the biological community, in the raptor community. Jim Bednar said they weren't territorial. And so Dawson and Mannon did an experiment where they released a captive Harris hawk near nests to see whether the group would go after them or not, and they did, 93% of the time in their trials. So I would call that territorial. But they didn't go after them the way they would attack a coyote or a great horned owl. They were using their ritualistic aggressive behaviors, but they were still going after them. And the lesson for us from that should be, why should we just expect to be able to throw two Harris hawks together and they get along? I mean, guess what? Sometimes they do, and that's pretty amazing. But, you know, more often than not, we should be socializing them first. Winter aggregations are another part or component of the cooperation in wild Harris hawks. So this happens usually late in winter, pretty close to when the birds are getting ready to breed. And so it may function in helping to find mates and also to recruit birds to the group that might be helpers. So 2 to 3 groups may, not in their territories, but in areas in between the territories, gather together. And I wonder if they do some big-time group hunting, like with this group here. Anyway, but this is a communal roost, and they're in no man's land, and this is my friend Romeo who took this picture. Good picture. Harris hawks are also pretty intelligent, and it's something to be remembered, especially when you're training them, that you don't want to overtrain them, that kind of stuff. Wild hawks have to keep track of a lot of things that are the identities of individual hawks, and they know individual hawks. They know individual dogs, they know individual humans, Our hawks all know their names, blah, blah, blah. Okay, group membership dominance. They have to keep track of alliances. Did you cheat or did you actually help in the hunt? Should you really remain a group member? Are you contributing? Are you hurt? Can we help you? They need to know who their frenemies and their enemies are, etc., right? Well, in falconry, the situation is not quite the same as with wild. Hey, who's that guy? Bob Armbruster. Anyway, it's different. The birds are kept hungrier than a wild bird would be in general. They have a strong bond with the falconer, and that can kind of, the hawks get jealous kind of the way dogs get jealous. It can be all kinds of things. And a strange hawk that's in a hunting situation like that, there are things that they have to work. I mean, they may act differently anyway. So a little bit about intelligence. There was a study that Erin Colbert-White did with the Harris hawk. She did the string pull test. So this, with the raven, they've done that, like the string hanging down from the perch with a piece of meat on the end of it, and how long does it take the raven to figure out to pull the string up to eat the meat, right? So the New Caledonian crow, the Lear's macaw, and the kea are like the masters of this test. They're the ones that do it the fastest. And the thought is that these birds all have complex foraging situations. It's called the ecological hypothesis of intelligence. And so when you have complex foraging, it selects for a bigger brain, anyway, more complex stuff. And so the Harris hawk solved it in 8 minutes, which isn't bad because that's about the same time that the northern raven took. So it'd be interesting to see more done with this. There's also the social learning hypothesis, the social intelligence hypothesis, which posits that if you're a social animal, you have to keep track of all these nuances, and that's going to select for a bigger brain, possibly evolve for intelligence. And I think both of these things may be going on in Harris hawks, because Harris hawks hunt in some challenging areas, and then they are also social. And we know in falconry that a make hawk is often a social learning experience for a Harris hawk. A Harris hawk doesn't need that. Plenty of people just hunt with one bird. You may take it out on the first day and it catches something within 5 minutes. Doesn't need a make hawk, but they really do learn, and they immediately want to follow another bird or an adult. So group hunting requires, in our opinion, parent-raised birds that have experienced constant socialization. The weight control needs to be right. A bird that's starving is very likely to kill another bird because it's the closest thing to it and it's starving to death, right? A bird that is, and a bird that's too fat, especially an older bird, the hormones start going, and that can cause a lot of grouchiness too. Anyway, frequent hunting helps, and having ample game. This is field in Amarillo, not recently, but anyway. So a little bit about socialization in captivity. I took this picture from the airplane, one of my kite studies. I'm like, can we just swing over to the house for a minute? Anyway, we're close to the Pearl. So I paid for the extra time too, by the way. So this is our house, and this is the fenced-in chamber with a pheasant netting over the top. That's the weathering area. The chambers are all 20 by 10 feet by 10 feet high, and the birds can all see each other. The birds in the weathering area can see each other. The babies can see everybody. There's a lot of socialization going on there. We see aggression coming right out of the egg, and we actually incubate the eggs and raise the young for the first 5 or 6 days. Oh, I don't know if I can start this with this. Let's see if this starts it. No. Can you,
Is it video?
Yeah. This one, like there should be right there. So when the babies are fighting and they're little like this, what the parents do is they smush them. Oh, well, I'll just smush you so you can't tackle each other. Oh, and the food color is to keep track of the bloodline for the parents. Anyway, so they're like horrible little dinosaurs, and so we don't let them do this. We were just doing this for the pictures, but Those two are graduating, they're going in the nest that day. The parents will also pick up the baby by the wing and move it away if it's a bad baby, you know, stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, they're horrible. So when they graduate, we put them out in the nest. So we put them in the nest when they're 5 to 6 days old. So they'll be parent raised and know they're Harris Hawks. And the parents didn't want their pictures taken. That's and of course, we don't want any degree of imprinting, and that's killer raising babies there. We keep the babies in with the parents for 15 to 20 weeks. We arrived at that amount of time by trial and error. You take the babies from the parents too young, and they act way more imprinted. If you wait a whole lot longer than 20 weeks, it depends on the parent and stuff too, but then they tend to get wilder, and they're wilder, and it's not like they're hunting, so it's not helping them at that point. But anyway, there's plenty of opportunity for socialization here, as you can see. We pull the eggs in a string so we get more eggs than what you would get in the wild. Harris Hawk in the wild, the largest clutch I've ever heard of, I think, was 5. So what happens is a lot of socialization training in that 15 to 20 weeks, where the parents are constantly being tested by the children, and the young hawks are constantly being taught over and over again, do not knock into me when you're flying to the perch, do not land on my back, do not jump over me, do not look at me, do not do this, don't do that, don't scream, don't fight with your siblings, whatever. So in this case, the parent has the foot open when it's striking the baby, so it's not hurting it. And the baby is starting to give a little submissive posture, but not enough, and she's alarm calling at it. And here she's doing a lunge and a stomp, where the parent will go up and stomp right next to the baby, and alarm call, and the baby is submissive posturing, and what it's really supposed to be doing is moving, but it's too scared, so hopefully it will soon. This is Zippy, that we got from Bob and Mary, and Zippy is in the middle of the nest breaking up a ruckus that happened in the nest there. And so they do a lot of that, where they'll chase, when the babies are fighting, they'll chase them around the cage. They may even, hold feet, do the foot grab, that kind of stuff too. So socialization training also includes things like them all sleeping in the nest together after they've fledged. They'll go back to cute stuff, playing. There's a lot of good stuff there too. Training, just a few bullets about training. Avoid too much food association. That may not be the case in a passage bird, but even in a passage bird, you can do too much food association. What that does is it kind of causes imprinting, because Harris Hawks seem to have a long imprinting period, imprint-like behaviors. Overtraining, Harris Hawks are smart. When they've learned a lesson, you don't really want to keep repeating it with them. You want to move on to the next step. And then, if you move on to the next step and you find you need to go back, well then okay, but keep it moving forward. Isolation from other hawks, try to avoid it at all costs, but I'm going to talk about that, because when we say avoid isolation, we don't ever have hawks that are down the way together if we're not hunting, never. They're within sight of each other, but they're not loose. So, and go hunting as soon as possible. And if you're not going to go hunting, don't keep the bird's weight down and don't keep training it. Just fatten it up and wait till you're ready to go hunting. Once you got it, coming to you and stuff. This is our weathering yard with hawks in it. And I think I already mentioned that everybody's, so they cannot reach each other, and there's a safe distance. You always want to imagine, like, what if it just broke? That would never happen, right? Yeah. So this caused a lot of controversy on Facebook. I love to cause controversy. Okay, anyway. But I mean, it shouldn't be. So no, that isn't hawk meat in her crop, okay? She was eating nutria. Do house me with another hawk when I'm hog fat. And don't do it when I'm hungry. And we don't, as soon as we start dropping the bird's weights, they come out of the molting chambers and they are not together anymore. So, we don't want it to be like 2 hawks enter and 1 hawk leave, right? That would be bad. We did, and so we are scientists, because really a lot of people were pissed at me for posting that. And that's okay, I don't care. But anyway, I just don't want hawks to die, that's all. Tom and I collected a lot of data on mortality in captive bred, and in falconry birds used in captive breeding and in falconry. And in the Harris hawk sample, we had 322 hawks that died not of old age, died of other things, right? Whether it's disease or injury or whatever. And in this 322, 9% were killed by another Harris hawk. Sometimes it was the mate, the hunting partner, equipment failure, perched too close, free lofted while hungry. This has happened quite a few times since this study, but I didn't have time to update the numbers. People will do this like they have a breeding pair and they also hunt with it. And so they figure, well, you know, since they're a breeding pair, it's okay to keep them together when they're hungry. And maybe it was for 3 years, and then in the 4th year during the hunting season, ew, not so good anymore, you know, one of them killed the other one. So, ew, that sign didn't come out right. Anyway, so this is the kind of association that happens over the molt. Communal bathing, allo breeding. One of the hawks is preening the other one here. This is these are the hawks we brought to the meet here, and it's the Coulson Academy or the School of Hard Knocks. And let's see, Banshee did not want her picture taken; she was mad. But all these birds get along. Sherry's new. And so she's the young bird in the group, so we always watch to make sure everybody's getting along with her since she's new to the group. But we mix and match them. I mean, we don't fly them all together, but they all fly together depending on what group we put together for that day. All our hawks have telemetry on them with their own frequencies. This was Tom's birthday last year, and not fair. This was our best hunting spot, the biggest hunting spot. Tons of rabbits, and it was mowed to the ground. We always feel a lot of pressure to find enough hunting spots. And so I'm going to talk about how we find hunting spots, and I hope this will be helpful. Game is not distributed equally or evenly across the planet in space and time. And that's something that everybody needs to understand. I'm a population biologist by training, and their prey numbers and population cycles fascinate me. This was ice chest full of rabbits from a nice hunting trip we made out west, and this is how this happens. What we're looking for, we're not looking, well, yeah, we are looking for this, but we don't want to see them that happen to them. Sorry. This was in Odessa a few years ago. But the point is, there are areas where game populations can be really up, maybe even in numbers that are artificially inflated by humans. But, you know, finding really good game spots makes for better falconry and more fun. So this is a little leveret, a baby jackrabbit. And this is, you know, from the Dust Bowl days. This is one of the jackrabbit roundup pictures. But jackrabbits tend to go in 3 to 10 year cycles. The longer cycles tend to be in the northwest. So the farther north you go, usually the longer the cycles. Longer cycles are not good, right? Because that means you have a lot of downtime, right? The desert can have long cycles, and of course a lot of that can be dependent on rainfall, usually. But, you know, can you imagine 470 jacks in a kilometer squared? That sounds good to me. 1,500? I mean, yeah, 1,500. So this is some of their birth rates. Normally they can have like 3 to 4 litters a year. If conditions are good, have 3 to 6 babies per litter. And so, you know, 14 leverets a year per animal. That's pretty good per pair. In scouting, we have some scouting tools that we use, and you probably know about, many of you know about these, but anyway, Google Earth app, I like that. I like to use my location, especially if I'm trying to figure out which way I was supposed to go to get out of a field when it's dark. You know, but don't depend on it, because sometimes your 3G network is going to let you down. So it's always good to have an atlas too, or have studied the area ahead of time. Since I'm a biologist, I always do that. I always know where, I try to always know where I am anyway. OnX Hunt, that is a cool app because you can get it per state. You can get it on your cell phone, on your on your computer. It shows you the boundaries for everybody's property, and it shows you the satellite imagery, and it tells you who's paying the tax bill, and it gives you their address. It doesn't give you a phone number, but it's pretty handy. I use it in my research all the time. But if they find out you've got it on your phone, you can't lie and say, I didn't know that I was on your land. You know? I mean, there could be downsides, but anyway, theoretically. So some more scouting / weather, underground, all the weather apps. We use the Waze app to look for traffic, to make sure that if we see that there's a bad traffic jam or whatever, that we may take a side road. We're paranoid about carbon monoxide poisoning because it's a main killer of falconry birds in general. And so, you know, you can select the voice of your Waze app. And so I selected Lieutenant Uhura, and she says all these useful things like, Captain, I'm detecting roadkill up ahead. That's very helpful for scouting. And Tom cuts up, this is to get ready for the trip, he cuts up like containers full of tidbits. And so it's really handy when you're feeding 9 or 10 hawks in a hotel room and stuff. But he's going to set up a vending table later tonight. And we're going to be rich, yeah.
Tickets for sale.
Yeah. Call me. So cooperation in the wild. Why cooperate? Cooperate. I think something happened in the presentation on here. Anyway, so let's see. Wait.
Scissors. That's scissors.
Anyway, let's talk about group hunting and falconry. Okay, so it pays to scout. I know we're terrible. We always put this. Anyway, we catch a lot of rabbits. Our falconry group size, we have flown 2 to 6 Harris hawks. Sometimes when we've talked with other people, we've had more, but we really don't like to have a bigger group size. And 6, we hardly ever do. It's usually 2 to 4 hawks. But if we have really tough conditions, or I mean, we used to have some spots that I'm going to tell you that it was really hard to get through them, and I was often having to crawl on my belly to get through them. But sometimes when we flew 6 hawks, we'd have 3 rabbits down at one time. You have all kinds of problems sometimes. That only happened a few times though. We find that there's strength in diversity. Diversity is big these days, right? Yeah. So when we think of it like assembling a football team, especially for antelope jacks. Like for antelope jacks, we want a hawk because, you know, a lot of times the slips are at least a 1/10 or a 1/4 mile away. We want a hawk that's far-sighted. We want a fast hawk. We want a heavy hitter. We just want a hawk that's going to catch the rabbit, really. But anyway, you know, teamwork. All these hawks are athletes, but they don't all have the same strengths. And some of them have, you know, one of them may not follow as well, whatever it is. So it pays to know your hawk. And this is Banshee's selfie in Wyoming. So when we're hunting with Harris hawks in the wild and in captivity, they use the move and search hunting tactic. That's Kingman. And they just, you know, cruise across the desert. They cover a lot of ground, and covering a lot of ground means that you need to follow the lead hawk and keep up with things. This is Tucson, around Tucson, hunting antelope jacks, and this was the bird that had the really good eyesight that would see things from far away. And we couldn't see over this stuff. We had no idea what she was chasing, but when she got up high, we're like, well, it's got to be an antelope jack because it's moving really fast. And another they do multiple successive stoops, try to bombard the prey. But, you know, the main thing is it helps you to keep track of an animal in thick cover. And so, so when this hawk goes down, this hawk up here still can keep going after it. And then that hawk, when it misses, can jump back up and hopefully rejoin the hunt. So keeping track of fleeing prey is really helps with this successive bombardment. But what they're trying to do is freak the rabbit out and force it to make a mistake, put pressure on the rabbit. Another tactic of group members is to flush hiding prey. And it tends to be the younger, less experienced birds that are the most impatient who do this first. I wish in falconry that they would never go in and flush the prey. I wish they would wait for me, but they don't, you know, because it would work better that way. Anyway, so this is a flusher here. And the reward for flushing, here's the flusher down here, that's Craig Golden, is that the meat is shared. And communal perching is another thing that we see in group hunting. And it kind of drives me nuts hunting in Louisiana that they have to always perch close. They don't always do it, but like while they're moving along, they have to perch right next to each other. Sometimes they're like shoulder to shoulder actually touching. You're like, man, if you would span, I'd like to have a bird over here, a bird over here. Like, I want the rabbit dead. I want y'all to be fanned out, you know, in good positions. But instead, it's like, okay, well, that's really not helping me a lot, you know, and when you're all in the same tree like that, whatever. But, you know, they still catch stuff anyway. But I think they really, they want to stay together as a unit. They're covering a lot of ground. And so it's kind of like a reassembly type thing, probably, to make sure that nobody gets left behind. They have a lot of ways to signal where a rabbit is, and I'm sure you've seen this in your own hawks too, but like, you know, they'll float over and you'll see them looking down like that, and they're like, oh, there's, so, you know, maybe the briar's this big, and it's like, I saw the rabbit go in here. They'll kind of hang out there. They will sit up in a tree over a rabbit and shake their tail. You know, Harris hawks do a lot of tail wagging. A lot of times that's signaling that there's prey below and that they've seen it. They'll also do the cackle call, and that can mean a lot of different things. It means frustration, really, I think. But like, you know, if I hear Hannibal doing that, I'm like, please wait, I'm trying to get over there, you know, I want to flush the rabbit. I don't want you to flush the rabbit. Because I know that he's doing that because the cover's too thick right there. Anyway. Backstanding is a behavior unique to Harris hawks. And, you know, it was first somebody thought that it was a mating thing. I'm like, males and they're not, you know, doing the cloacal thing and whatever, what. Anyway, it's clearly a hunting behavior, and it's a way to use a good perch, to share a good perch. And a lot of the places where Harris hawks hunt, they have a lack of, where the game is, there may be a lack of good perches, so backstanding is a way to get the job done. Okay, so as falconers, we assume the role of the referees all the time with a group, all right? We are not going to let them work it out.
Is that Tom and Jen?
Yeah, well, that really is Tom, but I photoshopped his face into a wrestling. And that's really me. Anyway, it does have a question mark there. I'll let you decide, but anyway. You know, like if we know Harris hawks speak. Like, so if we see something that like they're like going, you're like, no, y'all are talking too much. What's going on? You know, move them from the T-perch, get one, call one up out of the tree, whatever it is. We don't let them work stuff out. We separate them right away if we see the least little thing happening. And we may even decide that hawk is just, something's not right today, got to put it away. But, you know, there are a lot of things that happen, like a hawk will come up. A lot of times it's like a T-perch or a branch. If it's windy, young hawk is being careless and just slams right into another hawk. Ooh, that's not good. Or just oversteps their foot or whatever, looks at somebody the wrong way, you name it. So we're the referees, and our job is to keep the peace. And let me tell you something. This would not have happened on our watch, okay? Please, we would have called that one, all right? I'm just saying, we're good refs. All right.
There you go.
Current, yeah, that's for Mary. Okay, that's for Mary. Anyway, so the types of things that result in aggression, that can be contentious points, things on the T-perch, like I said, running into the T-perch, small prey, dropping tidbits, finding a pile of guts. Oh, dead skunk, finding a dead skunk. Oh man, Tom's hawk still smells like skunk. I'm like, oh, Leah, ew. Anyway, yeah, it's amazing. If it's nasty, they will fight over it. We have, sorry. Prey remains. Food begging. When young hawks are food begging out in the field, ooh, that sometimes the parents get, the adult birds really don't like that. And so you have to be careful. You have to watch are they upset right now or not? And then for young birds or new birds to the group, they may be fearful of attack. And I see this a lot in passage birds too, where they just want to fly away because they're afraid that strange hawk is going to attack them. So you have to watch how they're acting. Are they keeping up? And if the bird's not keeping up, well, go call it up. You know, get it back in the group. If there's a problem, get in there and, Yeah, a mouse. Mouse is something they'll definitely. Oh, you know what? Let me just say too. Like, I've had hawks that have hunted together for 10 years. They both caught a rat at the same time, right at my feet. And for some reason, one of them was mad at the other one after that, even though we rewarded both of them. And so we just didn't fly those two hawks for the rest of that day, gave them a timeout, so to speak. So group hazards, there can be things that happen that are not what you want to have happen. Like, you don't want that to have that happen, right? That would be bad. There are a certain percentage of Harris hawks. Our estimate is that it's about 5% that are sociopaths, that they really don't belong in a group situation. And it's not just captive bred birds. I mean, we've had people tell us, yeah, this passage bird I had, I trapped it, it was alone. And that doesn't have to mean anything, but it never, maybe it just never would get along with another hawk no matter what I did. So anyway, we have to worry about things like a bird tumbling into another one too. Like, say the bird catches a rabbit and it's rolling down a hill with it, and another hawk's coming in. It may grab the hawk in the wrong place. That, of course, that's all bad. We just run in and separate them right away. You don't ever want to pull a hawk off another hawk. You either want to slap it, like that, scare it, usually scaring it off by slapping it. I mean, I don't mean real hard, but that's usually makes them let go. And for them to let go, that's the best way. But sometimes you have to just take each talon out the way it went in, and that's not nice. Anyway, those things can happen. So we've had 2 Harris hawks that we had to stop flying with other hawks because they either maimed another Harris hawk or killed it, or we had to. They maimed it, they injured it bad enough. So, but most of the time everything is really nice. This is in Kingman, and that's a jackrabbit. And there's a lot of group success, and that's important to us because we really like to hunt and we really like to catch rabbits, but we really like our hawk. We like every hawk to catch, and every hawk hawks really feel satisfied when they catch. They're happy when they catch. So we really spend a lot of time looking for game. As Americans, we're newcomers to the sport of falconry, but we have contributed a lot to the sport of falconry across the globe. And the Harris hawk is one of our big contributions. That's, Japan, Singapore, Thailand, you name it, people are flying Harris hawks now. And then group hunting is another thing that we've contributed to the sport of falconry. And this is, of course, Kim Olson, Craig Golden, Heather Gast, Bob Armbruster, Toby Bradshaw, Dan Pike, Charlie Kaiser, and Pam Hesse, the Snells, plenty of people who are doing group hunting. It's an American phenomenon, and it actually hasn't caught on that much in Europe, and I think it may be partly because they have mostly warrens type situations. It's hard to say, but anyway, they're just behind the times. Anyway, thank you very much for having me tonight.
So, just looking at this, I'm assuming that there's a lot more people than just this that fly Harris hawks in groups, or am I wrong?
I just mentioned
but there are a lot, right? It's a very, very common thing in this country.
I don't think it is.
Really?
I mean, it's become more common, I'd say, in the last 10 years, but it used to be pretty rare.
Interesting.
Still rare, yeah.
It's still pretty. I mean, especially, where the group is a socialized group, not just people meeting up occasionally where the hawks don't know each other, because they really work as a unit,
So what about in terms of flying a younger passage bird that's still having issues and you're flying it by yourself? What are the ways that you can help build up your bird's confidence?
Yeah. Well, I mean, finding easy hunting. I mean, certainly it's caught some game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Easy hunting situations. One of the things that gives a hawk confidence is taller grass, where the rabbit looks smaller. Finding close lips.
Okay.
And, Tom, you have anything to add to that?
No, that's about it, just, but, yeah, just gain, and getting the weight right, just, repetition, basically,
Yeah.
over and over.
Jamaica?
When you're talking about group hunting isn't done as much as one would think, you're talking about the same birds being flown
Yes.
together day in, day out, so they are actually a cohesive group.
Yes.
Rather than the show up and meet and throw two hawks
Yes.
together and say, this is group hunting. It's
Yeah.
not, because they're not a cohesive group at that point. It takes a lot of work to put together a pair of Harris hawks that want to work together. And you can fly the same pair together all the time and not give that, because like you said, they might not like each other.
Right.
Or their personalities might not click, right?
Some hawks,
Just because you put two hawks together and fly them
True.
together for a season doesn't mean you're group hunting yet.
and it doesn't, yeah, and I mean, the dragon is not that cooperative. She's still, she's there with the, some birds are better group members than others, so,
You mean like people?
Yeah.
Once they're a group hunter, they're a group hunter.
Doesn't matter, you can put them with anyone, right?
That's the idea. They understand the group hunting.
Right.
So in your selective breeding, how much do you care about size? Is it more behavior, or are you trying to get the bigger female you
We're
can?
not looking for size, yeah. Well, because, I'll tell you why, I mean, like, we've had little birds that their first hunt attacked a mule deer, was hanging on its neck and stuff. But I mean, they didn't take it down.
Right.
But I mean, but catch
Catch
white-tailed jackrabbits in the first couple of hunts, so.
Yeah,
I
man.
mean, a small hawk. Yeah. Oh, so today, you guys, we had a wild Harris hawk that kept circling over us. And then when we were calling the hawks back to the truck, she came in and she was from me to that post right there.
Wow.
And
Really?
so we threw out a little squirrel that somebody, something that somebody caught after, but she wanted to come home with us. She wanted to be part of the group. I was like, that's so cool.
Was she an adult?
Yeah, our
or
birds were
immature?
like, sure, come on,
Was it a passage?
Yes.
Where?
No, it
See me
looked
later.
like a nice bird. I mean, and flew right over our. Yeah, so. All right, thanks, y'all.
Okay.